I felt my truck shudder and shake. Something felt off. Suddenly, my rear passenger wheel bounced onto the hood of my Ford F-250 and launched into traffic. My truck violently vibrated as the wheel hub assembly ground on the asphalt. My hands cramped as I clenched the steering wheel and fought for control of my truck and the 8,000-pound trailer I was towing. I limped to the shoulder, flipped on my hazards. My unblinking eyes tracked the rogue tire as it hurtled across 2 lanes of traffic towards the interstate median. My breath slowed, and I waited for the worst to happen. 2 years prior, I started a mobile axe throwing business in Philadelphia. I bought a large flatbed trailer and hired a welder to build a 20-foot long and 10-foot tall chain link cage on top of it. At the end of the trailer, I built a thick wall, a combination of plywood and 2x10s. The cage protected other people from errantly thrown axes. Meanwhile, I coached from behind a wall to protect myself because as good as a coach as I was, not everyone has the baseline hand-eye coordination required to throw an axe safely. I originally planned to focus on corporate events, but I struggled to find private bookings, so I went where the cash was while I tried to find my footing as a small business owner. So for my first summer, I rented plots at 5 county fairs in Pennsylvania. By charging the fairgoers individually to throw axes, I generated a modest revenue stream. County fairs were a new scene for me, and the stereotypes about county fairs are mostly accurate, but they are only a small bite of the full corn dog. They're so much weirder than the stereotypes portray. Of course, there are plenty of fried Twinkies and Oreos. Carnies set up fair rides with little concern for their personal safety. Rodeos with bull riding, barrel racing, and kids riding sheep were huge draws, but I preferred the demolition derbies. And after a few fairs, the Trump merchandise booths and the pig races started to blend together. I liked most of the other vendors, and I felt a kinship with the performing acts and made friends with everyone from glassblowers to high divers. The high divers in York, Pennsylvania, offered to let me cool off in their pool, but they warned me that it smelled like gasoline because they always lit a diver on fire for the grand finale. Yeah. I enjoyed having cool neighbors, even though sales dipped while they were somersaulting from 40-foot and 80-foot platforms into a 9-foot deep above-ground pool. Depending on the event, my trailer could be near butterfly tents, beer gardens, or hot air balloons. I ended up having a lot of great neighbors, stunt motorcycle riders, a farmer who ran pig, duck, and goat races, as well as Lady Houdini and her husband, Kevin. There was a sense of community there. You'd look after your neighbor's tent when they had to take a break, and they'd do the same for you. At the end of my first year doing this, I moved to San Diego for a new adventure, and I brought my business with me. Thanks to a tip from an acrobat in a traveling circus in Juniata, I had a plan to expand my business beyond Pennsylvania. You either pay to be at a fair, or you're paid to be at a fair. I wanted to be paid to be there. So that November, I followed the acrobat's advice, and I booked a trade show booth at the International Association of Fairs and Expos annual conference to convince these fairs to pay me. I was ready to lean into this plan to help make the transition to the West Coast. And it kind of worked. I made my first sale, and I had to step out of the exhibition hall to cry a little bit. I thought they were happy tears at the time. I think I was happy about the sale, but those tears were also the release of all this pent-up stress I was carrying. I just hadn't given myself permission to deal with the stress until that first sale closed. After a couple more contracts, I expanded my business to multiple states: Florida, Ohio, Wisconsin, Indiana, and New York. You know, really easy states to get to from San Diego. So that July, I drove to Wisconsin in 5 days and began my tour of the Midwest and Northeast, concluding with the biggest county fair in the state of Pennsylvania that October. Merch sales were less than I anticipated, and I was spending more money to replace axes and repair fencing due to the wear and tear than I had originally budgeted. It turns out more people throw axes when it's free. The entire trip was an exercise in frugality. Most of the time, I either camped or stayed with friends and family. I ate cheaply, sometimes trading axe throwing time for food from vendors. Life on the road can be just as much about cutting costs as it is about making money. Nonetheless, after living expenses, I was still only breaking even. What was manageable that first year had become incredibly lonely and even more difficult as I expanded. The community I found with other entertainers helped, but after a week or two, everyone moved on to the next stop. For how crowded fairs are, they conceal a lot of loneliness. I had regulars that felt different than the regular customers, people who would stop by every day just to talk to me. Subconsciously, I think they knew I couldn't leave my booth, so I had to hang out. They'd pay sometimes, I'd let them throw axes for free other times. The fair seemed like a big source of social interaction for the misfits and the loners. Other people sought a captive audience to discuss their political or religious beliefs. The common thread is they were all seeking connection, even if they could be a little antagonistic about it, like the guy who was shocked when he found out I thought the earth was round. The rarest type of lonely I saw was the man, always a man, who made a poster advertising he was single and looking for a wife. A real-life Tinder profile. This man, and I did see more than one, would buy a ticket to the fair not to see the shows or eat funnel cake or ride the Ferris wheel. He was there to stand in a busy area with his handwritten sign displaying his name, religion, occupation, phone number, and sometimes income. Yeah. He was always easy to make fun of with my neighbors. But as the summer wore on, I realized I was doing the same thing. I wasn't writing on posters and taking as big a social risk, but I was filling my evenings with dating apps and dive bars, anything to find connection. I was doing the same thing as the poster makers, but my humiliation was private, not public. I renewed the registration for my trailer and truck and even paid for my truck to get an enhanced safety inspection. That way, I could be sure I would have no issues on the return journey from Pennsylvania to California. Thank God fair season ended, and I began my road trip back west that October. I stayed with friends outside Pittsburgh for the first stop. The next day, I was headed to Louisville, back to the interstate. I'm braking as I watch in horror while my wheel treats the berms on the median like bumpers on a pinball machine, and it careens across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic. Thankfully, it was midday, and there just happened to be one of those gaps in traffic between the clumps of cars. So I watched my wheel vault through an empty section of traffic like it was trying out for the triple jump at the Olympics. Relief washed over me as my wheel came to a rest in a ditch. Thankfully, this incident didn't fuck up anyone's life. I had only fucked up my own life with this dumbass road trip. I got extremely lucky during an unlucky event, and that was not lost on me. I took a few deep breaths and gathered myself before handling this like any millennial would, by furiously Googling tow truck companies near me. There was a commercial semi-truck mechanic off the next exit. The 18-wheelers they worked on made my Ford F-250 look like a Prius. Those mechanics rocked. After the terror of almost causing a who knows how many car pileup, they had me back on the road by 5 p.m. It had taken me all day to drive 200 miles, and I still had 200 more to go until Louisville. I was feeling good. These were new tires, less than 10,000 miles on them. And I just had that enhanced safety inspection after all, and the mechanics just worked on my truck. Then, outside Grove City, Ohio, on the same day my rear passenger tire careened across the interstate, my rear driver's side tire fucking exploded. This time, I had to call 2 separate tow trucks to deliver both my truck and trailer from the highway to a discount tire parking lot and a strip mall with a few hotels. I was wiped out. I could only afford 2 of 3 things: towing the truck, towing the trailer, or booking a room for the night. Tow truck drivers generally expect payment after they finish the job, and they are intimidatingly large. So I chose to pay both tow truck drivers, and that meant I could not afford the cheapest room at a Red Roof Inn. That left me in the Discount Tire parking lot after midnight with no resources except for a truck with a blown out tire and a summer's worth of camping supplies crammed alongside some t-shirts I hadn't sold. This was Ohio, though, and they are not as lenient about people sleeping in vehicles as California, so sleeping in my truck was out of the question. I packed a bag and came up with a plan. I walked by a Home Depot and briefly considered camping in one of the sheds they display outside. That felt too risky, even though they weren't locked, so I kept walking to an open field by a nearby apartment complex. I found a spot where the grass met the tree line. I laid down a tarp and unfurled my sleeping bag. I slept outside that night. Not unusual for me, but the difference this time is now I was sleeping outside by choice, not by necessity. Or not by choice, but by necessity. Part of what happened was due to random chance, of course, like my tire exploding. I should have made different choices to protect myself from worst-case scenarios being this detrimental. Instead, I found rock bottom in a field between a suburban strip mall and an apartment complex. Before going to bed, I mixed an airplane bottle of tequila with one of those little backpacking cocktail mixes REI used to sell in the checkout aisle, a treat I bought myself to boost my spirits for the return trip. I opened it a little earlier than I had planned, and the margarita mix made 2 drinks. I made one and then decided that I would save the other one until I had fully dug myself out of this hole. I could have done this trip differently. I could have figured out a firmer business strategy and spent less money on merch. I could have bought a different truck or gone to a different mechanic. I could have waited to move out west. So here I was, trying to fall asleep in a sleeping bag on a tarp in a clearing in Grove fucking City, Ohio, so I could wake up at sunrise and explain to the Discount Tire employees, I need a new tire, but I'm not sure how I can pay for it right now. That was the low point for me on what should have been a victory lap home after surviving the summer. I got to have a different conversation for my second lowest point on my trip, and I decided to make my private humiliation public and share it. I made a phone call to my mom at 33 years old to bail me out so I could buy new tires and make it to Louisville. As dumb as it sounds now, and as dumb as it felt then, that margarita mix in a little metal tin became important to me. I needed something to look forward to that would signal I had recovered from that low point. I still haven't cracked it open yet because I don't feel I deserve it. I do feel like that day is approaching. Thank you.